Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So, in the last video we had a very serious conversation about where I've been, how things been, and in this video we're going to talk about have a very short conversation about what I read this month, because I failed whatever you want to thought. I didn't even get to the 8 books that I wanted to read this month, and so the first challenge that I completed was a book that reminds you of a pride flag, and the book that I went with was Paper Girls. And I really don't know how to describe Paper Girls, except it is about 4 girls who are doing a newspaper route and run into the nerd girl in town, kind of fight them on their route, and one of them gets robbed, and kind of a space chaos ensues. From what I've heard, it's like Stranger Things, and I've never watched Stranger Things, so it was really fun because at first I thought this was going to be a contemporary graphic novel, and it was a weird sci-fi, like, it went from everyday to discovering this weird machine thing to a whole bunch of like space stuff, like time travel, kind of like a time travel element that wasn't a time travel element, people disappearing, all that kind of stuff. But one thing I will say before I say which pride flag it reminded me of and show you the cover is there was a attempted suicide in this novel, so just be careful about that before you pick it up. But with that sad note aside, the pride flag that it did remind me of was the pansexual flag. So the reason it reminded me of the pansexual flag is we have the pink, the blue, and then in the background, like an ombre, is the yellow. There I read Saga Volume 7, and I really enjoyed this one. Again, trigger warnings for a attempted suicide. This novel was very, like, my emotions went from here to here, like they were just all over the place because of this book, and it was in the best way possible. The way that they introduced a new child made me really happy, but also the elements of what it's like to, and I don't know if this is a trigger warning or not, but there was a loss of a friend who felt like a family member, and grief was handled so well. There was once where it was made in a way I've never seen before, and it was an adult thing. Like, grief was in this novel so much, and as someone who lost their mom, it was kind of hard. Well, their stepmom, who felt like a mom, and it was kind of hard, but there's also a lot of funny moments to go with the sad moments. And I will say one thing about this graphic novel series is it is very explicit, so if you don't mind sex and violence and cussing, then it's a very good novel for you. If you don't know what Saga is about, which maybe I should have said previously, but I'm a little all over the place today, evidently, this is basically Romeo and Juliet in space. There is 2 different species, like human aliens, but they're called the Wings and the Horns in the series, but I feel like that doesn't tell you anything if you've never read it before. And yeah, it's a forbidden love. They're 2 different species, they fall in love, they have a child, and it's Romeo and Juliet in space, so of course there is space fighting, there is a whole bunch of different creatures and species, there's several elements of power, there's a bunch of LGBT rep, there's they never really say mental health, but you can tell specific mental health titles or really specific identity said as far as LGBT, but as this is a explicit series, you can tell that there is LGBT and mental health reps. There's also been several disability reps. Our main character is, of course, not specifically said to be black, but I'm guessing is black, and there's just complexions and representation all over the place. There's always, of course, very serious topics dealt with. Grief is the main one, but there's been brief, serious conversation about people owning people, which, of course, was not, there's been conversations about being submersed. There's just so much going on in this graphic novel series, and we're only 7 in. There's currently 9 out, and people are working on number 10 from what I understand. So yeah, I just pretty much highly recommend this series if you couldn't tell. Moving on, that I read was Rebel of the Sands, and I really enjoyed this. So it was kind of like like a Western fantasy, which is really weird. I don't like Westerns, but I really enjoyed this novel. And this novel is about a planned marriage where they've been trying to marry this girl off for a long time, and of course no one wants to marry her because she stands out from the rest of the crowd. Everyone's pretty much dark-eyed and dark-haired and kind of all looks the same, and she's blue-eyed and has blue eyes and light skin or light hair. Just stands out like a sore thumb in town, and of course she doesn't want to marry her uncle, especially since her uncle already has a wife, which is her aunt, and cousins, has cousins with her aunt. So of course she's a lot on the run, and normally that is all in my opinion, from what I've read, a math equation to a very cheesy novel. But this actually really worked out. There's battling and there's racing across the sand. They're racing across the desert and meeting up with another character who is the link to the crown, which that's not a spoiler. It's in the description. I'm just doing a terrible job describing books as I always do. And so yeah, he's linked to the crown. She's on the run from everybody that's trying to hunt her down, mainly her uncle who's trying to marry her. And yeah, there's just so much good in this novel. I really liked the idea of having a Western mismatched into a fantasy novel, and also just the level of fierceness in this character. Like, she, we could almost, I would put her with, just about every fierce YA character ever, except she kind of stands away from the crowd in her own way, and I don't know how to say how she does, but overall I just really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the serious conversations there were about family and grief and friends, and also being able to stand up on your own. It was just one of those novels that I enjoyed so much about. It's kind of hard to put into words what I enjoyed. But anyways, one of the books that I finished at the beginning of the month was Red Rising, and I almost need to sit down and reread all at once, mostly because this spanned from May, but I think I also started it in April. And I kind of want to sit down and just read it all together in like a synchronized time, so that way I remember more of it. But it was very enjoyable. It was a very sad novel at times, and it was also very, very shocking at others because of the sheer brutality that happens in this book. Like, it's almost like Hunger Games in the fact that there are people battling to the death, but also it's got this like fantasy element of reds versus silvers. It's not what they're called. That's red, white, or that's red, green. But we have two different races battling out, trying to kill each other for one true like authority power, and it's also in space. So yeah, that's a terrible description of the book, but I'm not good at describing books. I do just recommend you pick it up, and also go look up Red Rising for yourself, because I am trashing the description of it. It is like Hunger Games in space, but it's so much more than that, and it's not as cheesy as Hunger Games was at certain points. So, that being said, those are the 4 books that I read this month. Not as much as I wanted to, nowhere near 15 books, but that is what I got done, and I'm hoping that in July I will do a lot better, but we will see. And from there, that is going to be all for me. I'll talk to you all in the next one. Bye.